What's up, everyone? Welcome to What Are They Thinking? I'm here with my brother Joseph and our good friend Nathan, and today we're going to talk about the Atlanta Falcons and what they are thinking. So, I just want to break down a little, give you guys a little bit of idea of how we're going to break down the segments for our show. Just kind of moving forward, we have an idea of a segment breakdown for our show. We're going to start off. Usually, our guest that's a fan of the team is just going to break down the team, tell us about some of the moves they made, what their coaching philosophies are, what their who their GM is, and why they might have made some of the moves that they did. And that's what Nathan will be doing for us here shortly. So we'll start off the show with that usually, and then after that we'll do what we're going to call the starting lineup, where we just say hi to everyone in the chat. So if you guys want to say hi to us right now, I'm representing you guys in the chat. By the way, that's what I do. That's what I'm here for. I'm going to represent the chat. So say hi to us. I'll put it up on the screen. We'll say hello to you guys. And then after the starting lineup, we're going to go into why it will work. And we're going to ask you guys to just kind of amuse us, or whatever, however you want to put that. Like, let's say we don't think the Falcons are going to be good. Well, what is there anything out there that could happen why the Falcons could be good? So we'll go into why it will work first. And then after that, same thing, we're going to go into why it won't work. And if you think the Falcons are going to be a great team, still tell us some things that could happen why it won't work, and we'll discuss why it won't work. And then after that, we'll go into the verdict on what everybody thinks, and we'll break down what we think the Falcons are going to do as a group. And again, I'll be putting your comments up on the chat for us to talk about. And then after that, we have the Homer Minute, where someone on our panel is going to talk about their team and just break down – just go all homer on their team and tell us about their team and why their team is the best in the world, even if they're not. So yeah, with that, welcome to the show, everyone. We're gonna let Nathan take it from here. He's gonna tell, for those of us that might not know a lot about the Falcons, he's gonna tell us about the Falcons again. Like I said, the coach, some of the moves they made, and what kind of schemes they run and stuff like that. So. Without further ado, Nathan, welcome to the show, and let's hear about them Falcons.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it. So a few things about the Falcons that the average fan doesn't really know about is, besides the head coach is Dan Quinn, this is going to be his sixth season. The GM is Thomas Dimitroff, and I already see the 28-3 comment. I know it's coming. I can't even 2 minutes in. I can't make it 2 minutes.
He couldn't help. He's a Saints fan.
Okay. All right. And so Thomas Dimitroff, the GM, he's been there for a significant number of years. He's been through multiple coaches. And so offensive coordinator Dirk Cutter came over from Tampa a few years ago. He has been with the Falcons before. And a few things about the offense. One person who went away is Devontae Freeman, who was with us for numerous years. He's been replaced by Todd Gurley. At tight end, we lost Austin Hooper, which is a significant loss. He was one of the best tight ends as far as stats are concerned. He's replaced by Hayden Hurst, which some of y'all know that played for the Ravens last year. He's one of Lamar Jackson's big targets at tight end. And last year during the middle of the season, we traded with Mohamed Sanu. So those are the big losses on offense. Defense, which is usually not our strong suit, we lost Desmond Trufant, which we cut. That was a huge loss. It was mainly a salary cap cut, and he was hopefully replaced in the draft. We'll see. We'll talk about that later. We also lost Devondre Campbell. He went to Joe's Cardinals. He's a good linebacker. He's fast enough to cover tight ends. We lost him. We'll miss him a lot. We also lost a couple guys on the defensive line like Adrian Claiborne. Claiborne was replaced with Dante Fowler from the Rams, which hopefully he'll be able to replace. That'll be an upgrade. And we also lost Vic Beasley. Don't really have a lot of positive things to say about him, but he did have one good year, and he's a freak athlete, but he never lived up to the hype. But Dante Fowler, we'll see how it goes. His stats were probably inflated a little bit with the Aaron Donald situation, but we'll see how it goes. Those are the big additions and subtractions. Another key thing is we lost Matt Bryant, our kicker, who had been there. He was clutch for so many years. So we're replacing him with a group of guys, see who makes the cut. So that'll be a big loss also. But those are the big additions and subtractions for the Falcons, and hopefully you're a little bit up to speed on what's going on with the Falcons.
All right, Joseph, you have any thoughts on that, Joseph?
Yeah, I'll just add a few other things that I kind of came across, in my preparations. Now, my understanding is they run a base 4-3 defense, right? So the 4 defensive line, 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers. I don't know much about Dirk Cutter's offense. Is there anything you can tell us about how they like to play their offense, Nathan?
Yeah, so the defense is, I think their base is a nickel actually, where they don't really have the 3 linebackers. He likes to have like kind of a rover, like safety / linebacker. And for the offense, it's very similar to Sean McVay's offense. It's like I'd like to think it's a mixture of Sean McVay's, and it also still has a little bit of the Shanahan zone running scheme, where it's kind of a one cut and go offense, where they like to throw off the play action like Shanahan did. So I like to say I wouldn't say there's one word that encompasses the offense, but I like to say it's a mix of the zone run and Sean McVay's offense.
The draft real quick, some of the guys they added, and I'll just run through the players. And if you want to comment on them, so obviously first round AJ Terrell cornerback, second round they got Marlon Davidson, a defensive end. In the third round they got Matt Hennessy, a center. In the fourth round, Michael, or I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Walker, inside linebacker. Fourth round, Jalen Hawkins, a safety, and then a punter in the seventh round, Sterling Hoffrichter.
Yeah, so we'll start with AJ Terrell. He was the corner from Clemson that you probably, if you watched the national championship, you saw him get smoked a few times. But before that, he actually had a pretty good year, and there was a lot of different discrepancy in his rankings, but it was definitely a position of need after the cut of Desmond Trufant. So I think that he's going to be okay in his role. Is he going to be the next Desmond Trufant? We don't know. We'll see. As far as the second round pick from Auburn, the defensive end, Marlon Davidson, that's his name, right? Yeah, Marlon Davidson. Yeah, so he played defensive end at Auburn. He's about 300 pounds, which is not a typical 4-3 edge rusher. So Dan Quinn's already said that he's going to move him into the interior line for pass rushing. He'll play the edge a little bit on the run game, but when it's a passing down, he's definitely going to move down next to Grady Jarrett on the defensive line and rush from the interior, which I like, and I think that's a great plan. And the next pick was the guard from Hennessy. He's a guard center from Temple. And I don't really know much about him because I didn't get any Temple games this year, but he's he can play guard or center. And from what I hear, him and James Carpenter is going to battle it out at left guard. So we'll see how that goes. I'm sure he's at a disadvantage because they won't have much of a training camp, but if they have high hopes for him. And another thing with that situation is Alex Mack is going into the last year of his contract. So it's possible that if this is Alex Mack's last year with us, he could slide over to center and take over next year. And so the guys deeper, like the Michael McHale guy, I think he's from some school in California. I can't remember. It wasn't a big school. It was a big reach draft pick. I don't see him anything more than a special teamer, but I mean, that's when the 4th to the 7th round, that's you're kind of taking a shot. And if they turn into a special teamer that can contribute on special teams, you take it. So yeah, I think that would wrap up the draft picks. We didn't have many picks this year. We traded one for Hayden Hurst, a second round pick for Hayden Hurst, and got the Patriots in return for Mohamed Sanu. And so, yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I think we got a lot of information in on the Falcons. I think I want to hurry up and not hurry up. We're going to go into the starting line, what we like to call the starting lineup, and we're just going to welcome everybody in the chat to the show. Just run it down real quick and say hi to everyone. First off is Best Offer Queen. That's Aaron, one of my friends that is a reseller. Thanks for dropping in, Aaron. There's this really cool dude right here. He's a really awesome guy. We got Matt, Phoenix Clipper. What's up, Matt? Thanks for hanging out with us. He's from Arizona. He's a Cardinals fan as well. What's up, Matt? We got Chris, the Cajun reseller, big time football fan in general. This guy is a wealth of football knowledge. I'll tell you that right now. Be prepared. He knows college and NFL game really well. Huge LSU and Saints fan right there. Len, what's up? Len lives really close to me. I have not met Len yet, but he's in my area. Thanks for hanging out. Over the years, why can't I remember your name? I'm sorry about that. Over the years, thanks for hanging out. Let me know your name again. I'm sorry. It's well documented. I'm bad with names. We got, let's see, Cajun. Cajun wants to know. He's got some comments already. He's happy that they got a couple LSU guys over there on the Falcons. There's a blast from the past for me. What's up, Doug? Douglas Pack. Long time no see. What's up, man? And then Cajun wants to know, how old is Grady Jarrett? 50?
He is 27. I looked it up.
All right. So, again, everyone, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. You're going to be a big part of the show moving from this point on. I'm going to be representing you guys in the chat. Put your comments out there now. We're going to go into the part of the show we like to call why it will work. And I'm going to ask you guys to just, even if you don't think the Falcons are going to be any good at all, let us know if there's any chance they could be good, what you guys think would have to happen for them to be good. Hey, you know what? It's all right, man. We've all been there. We've all had. I'm a Broncos fan, so I've seen some bad. So we're gonna go right into that. We're gonna go into why it will work. Nathan's gonna lead off on that, but again, I'm looking for the chat. Let us know why this will work or why it could work, and we'll go into that for this first segment. Nathan, if you want to let us know why this will work.
Okay, so I'm gonna start off with, when you think of why it will work, it's going to be directly related to how good this offense is. So the offense, we talk about last year, they were towards the top in a lot of categories. I mentioned last week in my Homer Minute that if James Carpenter does start at left guard, all 11 starters would be former first-round draft picks. I don't know if that's ever happened before. Probably not. But that's an incredible amount of talent. And they have a lot of offense, a lot of salary cap going into the offense with Matt Ryan, Julio Jones, Jake Matthews, and a couple of guys on the offensive line. And this offense has a chance to be really, really lethal. If Todd Gurley is healthy and he's back to his explosiveness, I think this offense will suit him perfect with his one cut and go ability. And if they can get back to the running game to keep the pressure off Matt Ryan. Recently in the draft, they have addressed the offensive line. So the right guard, Chris Lindstrom, and the right tackle, Caleb McGarry, were both first-round picks last year. So this will be their second year. So they'll be a lot better, a lot more mature, a lot stronger. They've both addressed what they needed to work on. And so McGarry was a really good run blocker at right tackle. He needed to work on his pass protection. And Lindstrom is kind of like in the middle. He's got a lot of potential at right guard, but they both had a lot of stuff to work on. Alex Mack is a great center. He's done everything we've ever asked for him. Jake Matthews at left tackle, as about as consistent as you can get. And left guard is up in the air between James Carpenter and Hennessy, the rookie draft pick. At receiver, obviously Julio Jones is, I'm biased, but I think he's the best receiver in the league, not only because of his athletic ability, because he's a willing blocker. He's not a diva. He shows up for every involuntary or mandatory workout, rarely complains. You don't see him throwing his quarterback under the bus. He's the exact opposite of a diva wide receiver. Calvin Ridley is coming into the to his own as a second receiver. We got him as a great value in the late first-round pick a few years ago. A couple slot receivers that could step in. We picked up Laquan Treadwell, who's a former first-round pick from the Vikings. He could step in at the slot. We also got Russell Gage, who played really well last year. So I think the offense could be extremely explosive this year. Now, the defense is where we have some really, really skilled players. So if it's going to work, I think we saw in the past when we went to the Super Bowl. Yes, we lost 28-3, but when we did go to the Super Bowl, the defense really stepped up and was the only year in the Dan Quinn era where they were in the top 10 as a defense. And a lot of that had to do with they were healthy. They had the past 2 years, Keanu Neal, who's been their strong safety, has been out. He tore his Achilles and his ACL the past 2 years. They haven't had him. Big loss. He plays that Cam Chancellor role in Dan Quinn's defense. That is not the same without him. Ricardo Allen was out 2 years ago with a torn Achilles, I believe. And so he's back. He's kind of he's the free safety and kind of controls the defense, gets them in line. We are very, very young at corner. Isaiah Oliver, who's the top corner, I think this is his 3rd year. Yeah, Kendall Sheffield, his 2nd year at Ohio State, and then the new guy, A.J. Terrell. They're really young there. The stars of the defense are Deion Jones at middle linebacker. He's very solid, very fast, sideline to sideline, can cover tight ends, running backs. He does a really good job. Grady Jarrett's the defensive tackle, very disruptive. I rank him behind Aaron Donald and J.J. Watt as far as interior pass rushing ability. He's really, really good and extremely underrated. He doesn't get the attention that the other two do. Now, as far as pass rushing, we got Takk McKinley, who's been kind of a bust when it comes to his draft selection. He can get to the quarterback, but he seems to not ever be able to finish. This is his 5th year. They didn't pick up his 5th-year contract, so he's going to be extra motivated. Hopefully he'll come through for us on opposite side of Dante Fowler, who just got his big contract. So we've put the money into the defense with the exception of linebacker. We'll talk about that later. But we put the money into the defense, bringing in Dante Fowler, 1st-round draft pick. We got Neal back at strong safety. So we got a lot of things looking up for us. The other thing is Dan Quinn knows this is it. So he's going to put everything into this defense. He's kind of like, Dirk Cutter, you handle the offense. Dimitroff's given you so much talent. That's fine. I'm going to focus solely on the defense, so we got to get this defense back to where it works, because he knows that the offense is going to be, top 10 at worst, potentially even better than that. But in order for them to get to the playoffs and for him to keep his job, then he knows he's got to improve this defense, because the defense is a direct relation of him as a defensive guy. So those are a few things as to why I think it will work. And, yeah.
So, Joseph, why will it work? And one of the questions I want to know the answer to this one, because Falcons, one of the things I think that needs to work is they need to get back to that 2-headed running back that they worked really good for them for years. Who is it still Coleman? Is he still with them? No. So, he's in San Francisco, right?
Yeah, Brian Hill and Ito Smith are kind of the next 2 guys behind Gurley. So yeah, let me jump in and start with the point you brought up. So Todd Gurley, in the version of 2020 where it works, right? Todd Gurley is an immensely talented running back. He's had some injury problems. That's one of the reasons he's not with the Rams, and also because they had the price tag was too big for them, salary cap wise. So part of what works is Gurley comes in. They play a platoon, so he doesn't have to carry the load and potentially get injured, right? So they do more of a running back by committee, and Gurley, his skill set translates. He still plays exceptionally well. They've had success over the years in Atlanta with their 2nd and 3rd string running backs being productive in spot duty, right? They've had a really good job of. I think that their running back by committee has been one of the better in the league in terms of how they've managed it. So that's one of the versions where it works. Is Gurley's not asked to do too much, but he's in there enough to make a difference and have some of those amazing runs. Some of the other reasons it would work. Matt Ryan is, as much as everyone knows who he is, I actually still think he's an underrated quarterback. When you look at the advanced stats on his accuracy, he is very accurate compared to other NFL quarterbacks. I was looking at some PFF stuff on him, and they have this thing that I really love looking at, where they track how good a quarterback is at placing the ball in the right spot for the receiver. Right? We got completion percent is the very basic accuracy measure we use, but that doesn't always capture everything. And when you look at their charting of him getting the ball right in the spot versus too high, too low, in front, behind, his ratings in that are much better than most NFL quarterbacks. Looking through the quarterbacks, he's one of the best 5 that just kind of eyeballing it. So Ryan is a very accurate quarterback. He had an off year last year. He's had a few off years, but overall he's been a very good quarterback. Obviously, we talked about Julio Jones, absolute stud. There's not really, what more do you need to say? I think he's, as far as his combination of speed and size and strength, there's maybe 1 or 2 other receivers in the same conversation with him, and he's probably still the top of that list. And then Grady Jarrett's an absolute stud. His PFF rating of 90.1 is ridiculous. He's one of the most underrated players in the league. And, Nathan and I have talked football for a while, and Nathan's talked about how good he is. And as I've looked into it, man, that guy is a stud. So they have some really great players at really important positions. Jimmy, you talked about last week how important that interior pass rush is, right?
Yeah.
You talked about how the Titans use that against the Patriots. Well, Grady Jarrett, Aaron Donald's probably the only person better at that than Grady Jarrett, right? That interior pass rush. And they've got some young players that could step up. Their offensive line. Jake Matthews has a really good rating in terms of pass blocking, right? He's a really good pass blocker. Alex Mack is probably a Hall of Famer. Great player at center. They've got some young players, but they've got some guys to compete. You talked about Chris Lindstrom and you talked about Matt Hennessy. Those, and that between those 2 guys, hopefully, and then was it Carpenter? Was that the other guard you said?
Yeah.
Between those 3, hopefully the 2 best are going to start at guard and they're going to be productive. Right. So there's reason to believe they could be good. Even, look at, and this is a deep dive on their roster, but defensive end John Comiskey, who was injured a lot, didn't play a lot, only played 100 snaps, but had a 82.1 PFF rating. So there's guys like that if those guys step up and develop, and the guys like Neal and Jones and those guys play well, the defense is the big question mark, but it's not inconceivable that it could, enough patches work, enough players develop that it not becomes top 10, but good enough with that offense.
Right. Yeah. I agree totally with Joseph. I think the only way this will work is if their offense can be that kind of offense. First and foremost, keep the defense off the field as much as possible. Get back to some, get Gurley into somewhere near to the form he was in before. Hopefully the form. For it to work, he'd have to be in the form he was in before. Run the ball a lot. Do your check downs when they were successful. Ryan was one of the best at checking it down to his running backs and his tight ends. That's going to have to they'll have to come back to stuff like that. And, obviously the big plays are going to be there with those receivers. I mean, they got Calvin Ridley and, I can't, arguably the best, one of the best duos. I mean, maybe not the best, but if Ridley keeps going the way he's going, it will be one. But Jones is older. Anyways, I'm not going to get all that, but it could potentially be one of the best duos in the league this year because Ridley he's showing that he's going to be a star in this league as well. So, the combination of the big plays, but then the drives where you're checking it down to the running backs. Like I said, back in the day it was Coleman and Freeman. That's going to be hard to replicate. But if they can find something like that, and then with Hurst instead of a lot of new names there, so it's going to be hard to replicate it. But that's what they still have the main part of that, Matt Ryan doing that. So if he can get back to that kind of stuff and that kind of offense and keep the defense off the field. And try to get those points per game down by keeping that defense rested and off the field and not having to come back out as much and play as much on the field. Let's just be honest. That's how I feel the Falcons could make this work. Just being an explosive offense like they were, but also a drive sustaining offense as well. So And I'm going to look into the chat again, guys. We're going to break it into segments. We want to go into why it will work first because our guests are usually going to be fans of the team, and every fan is optimistic about their team. I know there's going to be teams where it's going to be hard to come up with a reason why it will work, but we still want to explore that because the Falcons aren't that far removed from being a good team, and they were 7-9 last year. They could easily flip that 7-9, add 3 more wins to it, and be looking at a playoff spot. So it's not unheard of for them to do that. So we always want to start off the show with that, and then I have a lot of comments. I have a lot of ammunition right here already for why it won't work. But if anybody in the chat, if anybody in the chat has an idea, anything they want to throw out there why it will work, we had some good ones. We kind of all mentioned this. If Gurley can find a way to be healthy, maybe if Quinn gets fired, they could turn it around. So if they can avoid some of those injuries, I just want to represent the chat right here real quick, guys. If they can avoid some of those injuries, things could turn. I appreciate. Some of their younger players, some of their draft picks could, come out and have an instant impact for the team, stuff like that. But with that, I think we're leaning towards, especially with the chat, guys. Did you guys have anything you wanted to go over why it will work, or we?
I just want to add one more thing, and then we'll jump on to the next segment. I think the move letting Austin Hooper go, and this is I know we were talking about this both of the show and trading for Hayden Hurst. Austin Hooper, obviously had more production. He was a starter, and he was a really good tight end. And letting him go was a tough thing, but you have to look at everything they did through the lens of a team that doesn't have much salary cap space. And what they ended up doing was they let it go a guy, who was paid a lot of money by Cleveland, and they traded for a guy on a rookie contract who didn't start, but his PFF grades were actually pretty comparable. Like, the time he was on the field, he played as well as Austin Hooper. Obviously, he needs to show that over a full season. He's not proven it. But, when you look at a team that has to make moves with salary cap issues, I think that was a good move with what they had to work with, if that makes sense. So if Hayden Hurst, a first-round pick, as you pointed out, Nathan, lives up to the pedigree, right, to the draft status, and he has as a rotation player in Baltimore, he looked like he was good. He just was behind Andrews there. That's he could end up they could end up not missing a beat there. Anyway, I think that's maybe a move that's maybe a little underrated because of what they did. Everyone looks at the guy they lost, but they did a pretty good job, I think, of putting kind of a patchwork replacement there.
All right, guys. With that, we're gonna go into the dreaded, especially for Nathan right now, the dreaded why it won't work. And I'm ready, guys. Hit me with those comments. And if you guys don't mind, I try to go back in the chat, but there's a lot of chat back there. If you guys want to drop some of your points you made before again, let us know. Joseph's going to start us off why this just isn't going to work for the Falcons this year. The moves they made just isn't going to work, and stuff that's been building up. So let's hear Joseph. And you guys, I just want to ask you two real quick. I'm going to be putting stuff up on the chat. Try to acknowledge that, and see what the chat is saying while you're breaking down why it's not going to work. So we'll try to acknowledge that a little bit more. I'm point guarding guys. All right, so go ahead, Joseph. Let's hear why this isn't going to work.
Let me start by saying I live in Georgia. I have a lot of friends who are Falcons fans. Don't hate me for what I'm about to say. Okay, this might be a rough. I guess it's a good thing we're all on lockdown because my friends are not going to even want to talk to me, right? But here's the version of 2020 where it doesn't work for the Falcons. Okay, their offensive line. Matthews is very good. Mack is great. But besides those two guys, there are a lot of question marks. They've got 3 really young players, 1 a rookie. None of them have shown over a long stretch to be consistently good. If none of those three takes a step forward, and Carpenter was not that great either, right? So you have three offensive line positions where they're hoping players will play better than they have, right? So if none of those guys develop, you have an offensive line that has two really good players, but a lot of question marks elsewhere. So that protection with a quarterback who is getting older, right? Matt Ryan is 35, I believe, and he hasn't had injury problems, but if he starts getting hit, that could be a problem. So that's one reason it wouldn't work. A lot of question marks on the defense, right? To make the argument for why it would work involved a lot of things going right. Okay. But, I talked about what a stud Grady Jarrett is, and he really is. In fact, I wanted to say the only thing he can't do is pass coverage. But the thing is, Grady Jarrett's coverage grade for PFF was better than the coverage grade of any defensive back on the roster. Now, I know it's a small sample. I know he doesn't go into coverage often. So I totally get the small sample. So it's more of a funny point than it is, a relevant point about Jarrett. But he had a 65 coverage grading. No defensive back had a PFF grade for coverage above 64. And their quarterbacks were like below 60. Okay. So when you have a defense, one of the things people talk about is how the pass rush and the coverage work together, right? And there's been debates about which the chicken or egg debate. Does the pass rush make your coverage better? The coverage, make your pass rush better? Either way, those two things work together, right? Because when your defensive linemen and ends are trying to get to the quarterback, if the quarterback can get the ball out to an open receiver before they get to him, then that doesn't work, right? The pass rush. But if the cornerbacks can hold, it gives the pass rushers more time to get home to the quarterback, right? In fact, good coverage can make average pass rushers better. Now, their pass rushers, interior, Jarrett's a stud, right? On the edge, there's some question marks. Fowler had a career year, 11.5 sacks, but he's only had one other season with more than 4 sacks in his career. He had 8 once before. Tack McKinley had a high PFF grade, but he doesn't get a lot of sacks. He had like 3 or 4 sacks. They let Vic Beasley go. Vic Beasley was not great, but he had 8 sacks for him. So the thing that doesn't work with their defense is their cornerbacks are so young, have not performed well, that even with decent pass rushers, they're not going to be able to get to the quarterback in time because they're going to unload it because those cornerbacks have not shown an ability to cover at even an average level in the NFL. So that defense is going to have a hard time stopping people because their cornerbacks are not going to hold coverage long enough, right? So that's one of the things that doesn't work for them. Even with good pass rushers, it doesn't work out. Quarterbacks take advantage of the defensive backs. Some other things why it won't work. Age starts to catch up with Matt Ryan, right? That becomes the version, right, of 2020 work because he's 35. He had a down year last year. And is that just a down year for him, or is that a beginning of a decline? Now, we talked about this with Brady last week. He's still an above average quarterback, and you can win with a quarterback like that, but you need a good defense if you're going to play that kind of football. And that's the biggest question mark. So when you add all that up, some questions on the offensive line, a lot of questions on defense, and a really concerning defensive backfield, especially at the corner position. Now, Terrell may help fix that, but he's a rookie. That's a lot to put on a rookie to be a number one corner. And, Matt Ryan, maybe his age starts to come to be, a problem. That's the version of 2020 where the Falcons are not competing in a division that has, yes, Cajun, the Saints, that are arguably one of the best teams in the NFC.
All right, Nathan. I know this is hard because I can't imagine talking about the Broncos like this, but I get it. I also can come up with reasons why. So let's hear, why is this just not going to work? Why will this not work for the Falcons? Why will this just not work?
first off, to all the Falcons fans out there, I do have Joe's address if you want to meet up and egg his house after this. No, I'm just kidding. That was all fair points, well made. So, I know as a Falcons fan, it's hard to talk bad about your team, but we've been around since 1966 and never won a Super Bowl, so they do kind of deserve it. And so, one of the big areas that I'm extremely concerned about is linebacker. Yes, we do have Deion Jones, but the other positions is I think he's either undrafted or seventh-round pick out of Yale. His name's Foyer and some weird last name, who's supposed to start at the other linebacker. He's been nothing but a special teamer. He stepped in when Deion Jones was hurt a few years ago. Other than that, he's been nothing but a special teamers, and it's really concerning with the Saints offense, the Bucks offense, even the Panthers offense with McCaffrey and DJ Moore. They're going to be better. And so it's the defense is extremely concerning. I totally understand all the question marks coming into that. The secondary, as Joe mentioned, it's nothing to be optimistic about. As far as the situation with the offense, there is a few things. He is absolutely right with the right side of the offensive line. Lindstrom, McGarry, they're both very young, inexperienced. Lindstrom, who was the first-round pick last year, I think the 15th pick, he missed 12 games with an injury. So, I mean, you could say he's a rookie again this year. He only played 4 games. So that's an issue also. Another big issue is Todd Gurley. I mean, the Rams ate $20 million just to get rid of him. I mean, what are we expecting here? I mean, if they thought he was going to be good, they would have kept him.
Right.
So that's a big issue also. Ito Smith's the backup. He's better than most people realize, but he's not a great pass blocker, and he's definitely not Tevin Coleman as a backup. There's a lot of questions, more so with the defense as opposed to the offense. And in the division that we're in, having question marks on the defense is extremely concerning, I guess you could say. Yeah. So
Old School Picker had a couple comments that you were putting up there, Jimmy, and sorry, I know you want us to respond to those. I apologize I didn't do them more. But yeah, like, talking about Matt Ryan holding the ball too long, and if he's going to do that with the questions on offensive line that we talked about, that's really going to be problematic for him, right? And he talked about their defense not being the best in the division. Old School Picker thinks that Tampa Bay has the best defense than Carolina. And Carolina, if you follow the draft, they drafted only defensive players this year, so it could get better. It's just a tough division. There's, with again, Drew Brees and Tom Brady, it's a tough division to have a smart old quarterback. Those quarterbacks are going to pick apart those defensive backfields.
Right.
Yeah, one other thing I wanted to mention was the Falcons have, as far as Dimitroff has built the roster, he has a lot of star players that consume a lot of the salary cap. Yes. That doesn't lend itself to being able to develop a team with a lot of depth. And we've seen that the past few years where if you go down at certain positions with injuries, you take a big hit in that area. It's the team's not built like as the Patriots are, a team with a lot of depth, next man up mentality. The way Dimitroff has built it, it's built on star power, top heavy. And so if the injury bug hits this team, you could see it crash and burn real quick, as it did last year when we started, 1-5 or 1-6 or something like that. Then the injury, then we got back healthy. So the way this roster is built, it does have the potential to implode.
I want to add a couple other things too. In terms of the receivers, obviously we know Julio Jones is amazing, just one of the, if not the best in the league, one of the best in the league. Calvin Ridley has looked really good, but I was looking at Calvin Ridley's numbers and his advanced stats, and I just got to say he had a great rookie year, but his stats from 2018 and 2019 look eerily similar. Like if you look at his stats, and I put notes down on this, like he had 92 targets in 2018, 93 in 2019, 64 receptions in 2018, 63 in 2019, 821 yards versus 866 yards, 10 touchdowns versus 7. He went down, but of course touchdowns are kind of vary a lot. And his PFF grade went up about 5 points, so he did get a little better. Like as good as he is, it does maybe. I mean, it's too early to panic, but like you would have hoped to see a bigger step in his second year, if that makes sense. To have a second year that was almost identical to his first year, is he a guy with like a low ceiling and a high floor kind of a guy? We'll see. I mean, he's still very good, but that's a concern. And then their depth at receiver is maybe a little bit of a question mark. They have their slot receiver who you mentioned who's pretty good at, but he's a slot receiver. Mm-hmm. If those top two guys go down, it's probably Laquan Treadwell, who hasn't necessarily lived up to his first round status. When the Vikings drafted him, so. If those guys stay healthy, they've got a really good starting receiver core. But, to your point, if there's injuries, it even at a position you would think is the strength on their roster, it gets a little concerning.
Right. It's my turn.
Jump on.
Did I get a turn? I just feel like the Falcons are, to me, just a recipe for a team on the verge of a total rebuild, restructure. So not the aging veterans that are high paid, having to let players walk because they can't afford them. Letting a couple good running backs walk away because for whatever reason, whether it's financial or whatever, having to make a lot of parallel moves. That's one of the things I was talking about. A lot of the moves I feel like they'll be lucky if they're parallel moves. Obviously losing Beasley and drafting a cornerback is not a parallel move. It's going to be debatable. I'd say right now Hayden Hurst right now is a parallel move. So just stuff like that. It's moves like that, and just trying to hang on for dear life is what it feels like to me. With the addition of Gurley, hoping there's not injuries there. And it seems like that's also like changing their offensive style. Going, are they going to just one running back? Who's their second running back? They were always a two running back studs back there, that were both good receivers and both good runners. So for me, I just feel like it ends really bad for the Falcons this year. It's close to time to rebuild. And it might be the right time while there's other teams in the division that are aging stars as well that are still feel like they have a better chance than the Falcons to go somewhere with those aging players. And I just don't think the window is big enough for Ryan and his age. So I just think, in my opinion, again, I know we're getting closer to the verdict, but and the defense has got so many question marks with all those things combined, and I think Gurley does not stay healthy enough, and I think the offensive line struggles, and there's too many holes everywhere else, and then you got players that are aging that aren't putting up the numbers they were before, and you're letting players leave and then patching with big question marks, in my opinion. So I just think for all those reasons it's not going to work, and it could be deflating really fast for that team if they start off bad. Like we're off to a bad start, and we're missing. We have a lot of aging players, and we're close. They have to know that rebuilding is in the near future, and if they start off bad, they're like, man, are we really at that point where we have to start rebuilding? And and Quinn is kind of wearing out his welcome there. All those things combined, I just feel like there's a lot of reasons why it won't work. I don't have all the total breakdown like you guys do of some of the players and what they've done, but it just has that feel to it.
Jimmy, let me just add one thing to your point, and this is, man, this is if I were a Falcons right now, I'd be really worried about this. Like Matt Ryan still has like a good 2 or 3 years left on his contract. Mm-hmm. So you talk about like going into a rebuild with a quarterback who's going to be 36, 37 at that point on a big contract. That's tough, right? And that's what, old school picker is saying right now. So that makes it even that much tougher. If you're going to rebuild, you want to build a good team and then take a rookie quarterback. But with that contract, makes it really tough to do that.
Right. Yeah. What are your thoughts? I want to know what your thoughts are on that, Nathan. How close do you think they are to a rebuild?
I think that's a valid point. I don't think it's going to happen because Arthur Blank is an older owner, and he doesn't want to sit through a rebuild. I mean, he's had prostate cancer in the past few years. Like he doesn't want to sit around and wait for a rebuild. So he's gonna milk this thing as long as he can in hopes of winning the championship, somehow breaking through and winning the championship. And so, as you know, is it one of those situations where you get ahead of the gun and you rebuild early? Like you mentioned, Brees and Brady have a couple years left. Do we get into the rebuild before them? And that would probably benefit us, but I don't think it. I'm almost positive that's not going to happen with Arthur Blank running it. And I think that has a lot to do with why Dan Quinn would remain the coach, was because he didn't want to go into building a team to suit a different coach, was because he knows that his longevity is not in his favor.
Yeah, that's a really good point. We talked about something similar with Coach Arians and the Bucs last week. As fans, we sometimes forget that there are real human beings as owners and coaches. A lot of them are older. If you own a team, yeah, right. But these owners are real humans running these teams, and even though you and I might say, yeah, the smart thing strategically to do is blow this thing up and rebuild, that owner's like, I don't have time, right, for that. So,
foosball is sorry, what were you saying? So I'm looking for the chat. Let us know. I want to see more. I mean, I know early on, I don't want to scroll. I can scroll back up, but what do you guys think? Why? Give us some more reasons why this. What do you guys think about the Falcons and it not working this year? Some of the things that I know Cajun put up a lot of good points. The defense is the real issue. I think they have a lot of holes on defense, like Nathan said. I didn't kind of go into that because, I didn't go into the whole breakdown of the whole team. I just feel like, because I went more into why I feel like they're going to rebuild sooner than later. Because their defense, there's again Dante Fowler, one good year, and he's been moved all around. Not all around, but he's been moved all around. Like, I just don't see. I feel like that's a parallel move. I know you're not a fan of Beasley, but I feel like they were kind of on the same path. Which one's gonna? Is either of them gonna pan out?
Yeah, that's fair.
And so for that reason, and and then a young secondary, and then injured secondary. The defense is, to me, a big part, but the offense aging and not having those two running backs, man. I know you guys have to miss that because that was fun to watch. Those two guys out of the backfield, they were both good receivers and good runners, and I don't know. Sorry.
Yeah. So that 1 year where we did have the offense, at an elite level, there's a lot of things that went well. Yes, we did have Kyle Shanahan, who's turned out to be an offensive genius. But a lot of things went well that season. All 5 offensive linemen started all 16 games that year. It was one of those things where everything meshed, everything worked well. The 2 running backs were the perfect complements to each other, and it worked out really well. So, I understand what you're saying. It's,
Well, and you brought up Fowler, Jimmy, and I think the point I made earlier about cornerbacks helping pass rushers really applies because he was with the Rams. That 11 sacks was with the Rams, who have better cornerbacks, right? Arguably one of the best cornerbacks in the league, right? So now he's going to a very different situation, and I don't think he's going to be able to get home to the quarterback the same way he did with the coverage that he had with the Rams. Yeah, I mean, the division's tough. Nathan, do you know who some of their non-division games are against?
Yeah, so one of the things last year when we did start 1-6 that, I was like, okay, we're going to finish 4th in division. We're going to get an easy schedule, right? And then we come back and we win all these games. We finished 7-9. Actually finished 2nd in the division, I believe. at 7-9. And so now we play the second team, the team that won this, got second out of fourth in all the other divisions that we play. And so despite us having a bad year last year, it didn't improve our, strength of schedule. I think we have one of the hardest strength of schedules in the league this year. I don't have it off the top of my head who we play exactly. Sorry, I don't remember.
Yeah, and that's I wanted to give me your guys' thoughts on a little more in on that. Real quick, I just want to answer this. I'll talk to you about it, Tommy and Chris. They're asking, not show related. I'll talk to you guys about it. I'm not ignoring you. I just want to stick to this. I'll talk to you guys about it. Because Cajun, a lot of people are talking about, and let's just go a little bit into that, the division that they play in, and why that is a big part of why it will not work. I want to hear your guys'. Let's try to keep it like 5 minutes each. We're running on an hour now. Give me your guys' thoughts on the division they play on, and then they're playing against the AFC West also this year, and why that's a big part of why it won't work.
Yeah, so as far as the cornerback position being a big weakness, the receiver position is a big strength in the division. I mean, you have Michael Thomas, you have Mike Evans, you have Chris Godwin, you have Emmanuel Sanders coming into the division, DJ Moore with the Panthers. And I guess you could even consider McCaffrey a receiver, right? So everything is – I mean, this division, not only do they have good quarterbacks, they have elite receivers and multiple elite receivers on multiple teams. And so that's going to draw, I mean, I don't really know how Dan Quinn's going to match up with these elite receivers with his lack of experience at corner. So that's going to be a big problem, and he's going to have to do a heck of a job to combat that.
Yeah, this is a bad – and I said this before – this is a bad division to have bad defensive backs with 2 veteran quarterbacks who are going to pick that apart. That's really a tough road to hoe. And then they play, Mahomes, the Chiefs and some other good quarterbacks outside of the division. That's going to really be tough for them this year.
Right, I agree. I'm trying to think who's – because, you even got some decent – you got some good multi-tool running backs. You talk about McCaffrey, and then you got Kamara. You got to deal with Kamara as well. I mean, he's had a couple – not what he was doing before, but he's still a really, really good running back, and so you got to deal with those 2 guys as well. That's going to be – I think that's going to be the biggest reason. And I'm agreeing with I'm just trying to say I agree with the chat on this. Like, the biggest reason why it won't work for the Falcons is that division. That division is just like impossible for them. I feel it. And then you throw in Tom Brady, which we'll see with that as well, right? So, but yeah, I feel like we're gonna go into the verdict on this, guys. Let us know what the final verdict is. We'll start off with Joseph. What do you think? What's your verdict on the Falcons? Then we'll talk to Nathan about the verdict. I'm gonna be watching the chat. You guys in the chat, let me know your final verdicts on the Falcons. And let's go into that verdict.
I think they're going to win. I think there's going to be a little bit of smoke and mirrors with them because one thing they have going for them is same quarterback, same coach, right? And we've talked about this last week with what's going on right now. Teams that have a new coach or new quarterback with the potential limited, preseason, that's going to hurt teams. So like teams like the Panthers, I think they're going to really struggle. But it is a tough division. So I think I could see them eking out 8 wins but having a lot to do with the fact that they're able to lean on a quarterback and a coach that work together, and they're not having to install a new system. They're a veteran team, not relying heavily on rookies, but it'll be a smoke and mirrors team. And if they happen to get in the playoffs doing that, they're going to be exposed by whoever they're playing in the playoffs.
All right. What's your verdict, Nathan? This is coming from the Falcons fan. Let's hear what your verdict is for them. Give us a record of what you think they're going to finish and just an in general idea of how they're going to do this year.
Yeah, so as far as the team this year, I'm extremely concerned about the defense, and I'm extremely optimistic about the offense. In saying that, as explosive as offense have become in the past few years, I think that the defense still, has a big influence when it comes to cold, rainy, snowy games in the playoffs. And so I'm pessimistic about the team. I think we'll go 7-9 this year for the third straight year. I know the Saints did that a few years ago and then were able to turn it around, but unfortunately, I don't think Dan Quinn will survive 3 straight 7-9s like Sean Payton did. And I think after this year, then the blank will move on from Quinn and Dimitroff. But that is my prediction for the year. The schedule is just brutal, and the defense is not good enough to hold up. But I think the offense is good enough to win them 7 games.
And Zengo wanted to know, yes, he is a Falcons fan. He's here to represent them today.
He's doing his best impression of a Saints fan right now, though.
Yeah.
Dan 7-9. That's what so that would be the 3rd year in a row at 7-9. Huh?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go with the. It's hard to say this and it's only because of Matt Ryan, because usually when a team has a good quarterback, it's hard for them to be that bad. But I just feel like it's the wheel. They're already starting to fall off. I think some of the wheels fall off this year. I think the Falcons get off to a bad start and it kind of balloons, like I said, and I think 7-9 is the absolute ceiling for them. And that's just I know that's, again, it's hard to say that because of the quarterback, but I feel like they get off to a really bad start. Coach, if he doesn't get fired in the middle of the year, it's at the end of the year for sure. I just feel like too many, like I said, I use the word parallels, and I'm using that very loosely. I don't even think that some of the moves are parallel. I think they're backward steps in a lot of key positions. And the only thing that saves it is if Matt Ryan does some of his magic to Julio Jones. But I don't think that's enough. I don't see enough there to give them a good record this year. And like you guys said, the division got better. A lot of teams they're playing are really good, and I feel like it's just not working. They had a good run years ago, 3-4 years ago or whatever, but it's just been downhill from there, and I think it's just going to continue. So that's my take on them. That's my verdict.
So how many win?
I think it goes bad, and they're lucky to get, and not lucky. I think they get around 5. I think they're lucky if they get 7 again.
Okay.
I'm going to say around 5 wins, and that's just because it's my whole theory of it completely falls apart for them.
Yeah, that's fair.
And it's just because I look at I watch football. I watch football all the time. Like, I'm a huge football fan, but I didn't realize how depleted their roster had become as far as some of the players they had before, and how many of those players from the guys that really contributed to their winning seasons are gone. And they're trying to patch it with some guys that have injury issues or questionable history, questionable, busts or whatever. Let's do it. They're a bunch of. They're this guy Ryan the Busted Leafs. What? That's the premiere of Ryan the Busted Leaf. They have a couple of those, not necessarily busts, but they may still have one of the Leafs still intact, but they're on their way to the complete. On their way to that bust.
Hey, Jimmy, just real quick. Nathan talked about they have all those first-round picks starting on offense. The way you have 11 first-round picks on your offense is some of them have to be bust, Yeah. So, to your point, Jimmy.
Right. Yeah, but I feel like not only like – yeah, I see what you're saying.
So I guess I'm the most optimistic of the three of us with thinking maybe 8 wins.
Yeah. And maybe that's just, again, like I said, that was just me over the last couple of days, just looking at what they have and the moves they've made. And I'm like, man, it's been a lot of parallel or downgrade at a lot of positions that are it's going to catch up to them. It's just going to, and I don't feel like Julio Jones and Matt Ryan can bail them out that much anymore. I just don't feel like it's going to happen. So yeah, we got a lot of good verdicts in. You guys want to close I agree with this one. This is probably one of the ones I agree the most with. That was a dynamic backfield, you guys. I mean, that was, and what Shanahan did with them. I'm a big Shanahan Homer fan, so and I think that was a big mistake that they made as well. You know, he was going to leave either way though, so I don't think it was a mistake. But losing him and him leaving, and maybe maybe they should have thought about buy Quinn and let's promote Shanahan. And they could have, but that's a whole nother story. So yeah, anything you guys want to close out on your verdicts, and then we'll go into our last segment.
I think we hit it all from my perspective.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So this last segment for some of us may be painful. For Matt, he's gonna really love this segment. Every week we are gonna do what's called the Homer Minute. Now, last week Nathan was with us, so he did his Homer Minute on the Falcons last week. The last segment is the Homer Minute, and that's where whoever's our guest will get to just go off on their, tell us how their team is the best in the world. But since Nathan did that for the Falcons last week, I'm going to regret this, but we're going to let this guy have his Homer Minute for the Cardinals this week. And you guys, me and Nathan have been told that we have to shut up and just listen and let him have his moment, and we can't disagree. So this one's for you, Matt. You're going to love this one, and I'm going to even – here you go. Homer Minute.
Do not sleep on the Cardinals defense. Yes, I know they weren't good last year. They were near the bottom of the league, but here's the thing. They had a lot of things go wrong. Injuries, suspensions. They have really good players at all three levels of defense. They have one of the most consistent top of the league elite pass rushers in Chandler Jones. He does it year in and year out. They have Patrick Peterson, who's one of the best cornerbacks in the league. He missed the first 6 games with a suspension. He struggled to get back up to speed because, he was out, wasn't playing, so conditioning and stuff, but he played better down the stretch. He's still elite. Robert Alford, their number 2 cornerback, was injured all year. So they had a rookie as their number 1 cornerback for the first half of the year. That rookie is now going to be their 3rd cornerback, isn't going to have as much responsibility. So their coverage is going to be much better. They have some really great players in other positions. Budda Baker is a stud, made the Pro Bowl. They drafted Isaiah Simmons. He's a rookie. Everyone's talked about him. Even if he takes some time to figure it out, he's immediately going to help them cover tight ends. That was one of their biggest weaknesses. No one was worse at covering tight ends last year. This guy will chase down those tight ends. He has the skill set to be potentially the best person in the league at covering tight ends. He can chase down quarterbacks. Their defensive line isn't the greatest strength, but they signed Jordan Phillips, who had a lot of 11 sacks, I think, last year as a defensive lineman. They drafted some guys to add some rotation, some depth in the rotation. A lot of things went wrong last year to make their defense as bad as it was. And if those things don't go wrong, and if they go right, if they don't have the injuries, that defense could actually surprise people and be pretty decent this year. That's my Homer Minute.
All right, hold on a second. Oh, I don't want to do that. There we go. So I'm going to put up, because just for fun.
Yes.
What was Joseph thinking? Cards did what?
Hey, that's the Homer Minute, man.
Being a Homer, Nate, not realistic. Yep, Father Time has come for Peterson. I'm glad Joseph is a professor of sociology and not the Cardinals. I don't know. OSP said that, and then Nate said, I don't know about that. They're in the toughest division. So there was a lot of this going on, a lot of
that's the Homer Minute, man.
That's right.
That's cool. We gave it to you. I didn't see Matt. Matt said he was having some. Yeah, I have to show the chat some love on that. I mean, everybody's gonna get that at the end of their Homer Minute, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, they're kind of, to me, they're a we'll see team.
Yeah.
What's up, Anthony and Nate? Thanks for dropping in, guys. You should go back and watch it. We had some pretty good information on the Falcons today. If you guys haven't been here the whole time, that's if you just dropped in. So yeah, that was Joseph's Homer Minute. That's usually the end of our show. We usually keep it just about an hour, a little bit over an hour. Everyone in the chat, though, I want to thank you all so much for hanging out with us. We had a really good time with this show. We're gonna next week we will have a guest that will be representing maybe this guy right here, the best team in the league. You know what I mean? So yeah, next week we will be talking about the Denver Broncos. We will have a Broncos fan as a guest, and obviously I will be helping him represent them Broncos. Huh?
Drummer Mike is Mike Anderson.
Oh, okay, there we go. Mike Anderson, not the Broncos Mike Anderson. But a close second to the Broncos Mike Anderson. He will be joining us next week to talk Broncos. So basically, we've decided to go ahead and scratch this segment for next week.
Right.
You guys know this will not be part of next week's show. And we're going to go ahead and put Drew Lock's head on top of Mahomes right here for next week. You won't see what? You won't see the busted leaf at all. There will be none of that talk. And they said, best team in the league. What? Come on, man. There you go. Showing that love to Peyton Manning. So yeah, you guys have anything you guys want to say before we close out? Thank this wonderful chat for hanging out with us.
Yeah, hey, it's good seeing you all. Thanks for being here. I won't name everyone, but I see who's been in the chat and just really appreciate you guys being here. Thanks for joining us. We're having a lot of fun. We hope you're having fun too. And also, if you're in the chat and you want to be on the show with us, we're looking for folks to join us. Yep. This is all about getting fans of teams with us like Nathan and like Mike who's coming up next week. So please let us know if you want to join us. We'd love to have you.
And I just want to say one thing on that. Like, if you don't want to be on camera, you can be like this where you can still join us like this and talk to us like this. So we're not having to keep up with you in the chat. If you wanted to join us this way, you could as well. Just to be a voice for your team, almost like a radio show or a podcast or whatever. You don't have to come on live, with your camera. You can just talk to us like that. So that's another option. If anybody you want to come on and represent your team, but you don't want to be on camera, definitely want to throw that option out there as well. We're all game for it. To make maybe put your team's logo right there or whatever you want to do. So I just want to throw that out. And before I go to Nathan to close out, I want to thank Nathan so much for hanging out with us on the first two shows. We look forward to when he comes back on and hangs out with us again. It's been awesome hanging out with you, man. And if you have anything you want to say to these guys before we close out the show.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure to be on these past two shows. I've really enjoyed it. I think you two are doing a great job, and this thing's headed in the right direction, and hopefully it keeps going in the right direction. And I'm looking forward to checking back in the future. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, man.
Thanks, man. We do appreciate you hanging out with us, man. With that, guys, I want to thank everyone again so much. We're going to end the show right here, and we will see you next week at the same time to talk the Denver Broncos and what they are thinking. Thank you so much.